Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Power Up series lung cancer community education presentation. We're really excited to hopefully share some helpful information in terms of coping with COVID-19 and lung cancer. My name is Colleen Christensen. I am the engagement coordinator for Lung Cancer Initiative of North Carolina, and I'm going to be moderating the conversation and questions you have. So first, just a couple of housekeeping items. We appreciate your flexibility with us. We're still learning the ropes with all of these virtual webinars and meetings, and so we just appreciate your patience. We are going to have time to answer questions after each speaker. So you should see at the bottom of your screen, there's an option for Q&A. So if any questions come up at any point during any of these presentations, feel free to send them there. And after each speaker finishes, we will have those questions answered. And so we're going to start with Reverend Adrian Dixon from Duke Raleigh Hospital, and then Dr. Neil Reddy from the Duke Cancer Institute, and end with Angela Hopper, who is a lung cancer survivor. So if you think of any question, maybe from the first presentation that comes to mind during the second presentation, that's okay. We can still answer those questions later down the road in this webinar as well. And we're going to actually start with Jenny Denai, our Senior Director of Programs, to share a little bit about the Lung Cancer Initiative of North Carolina. But before we do that, we want to get a sense of who is logged on today and joining us. So I'm going to launch a poll. Here we go, launch polling. Hopefully you see this on your screen, and share with us if you are a survivor, caregiver, advocate, or work in the healthcare industry. All right, it looks like most everyone has voted. So I'll end polling and let's see if I can share results. So we have a good number of lung cancer survivors and industry partners. Also healthcare provider, we kind of have everyone across the spectrum. So I don't know, hopefully you guys can see that on your screen as well, but we're glad you're here and able to join us. So with that, Jenny, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So like Colleen mentioned, I'm Jenny Denai, the Senior Director of Programs for the Lung Cancer Initiative. And thank you all for being here today. We're excited to be able to host these Power Up series virtually. And I know I'll talk about it later, but we're really having more of these events now because we can do this virtually. And so we're really excited about that. So at the end of this presentation, I have dates for future Power Ups as well. So thank you for joining us today. And I will get started and just share a little bit about the Lung Cancer Initiative for those who don't know. So our mission is to save lives and provide support to those affected by lung cancer, and it's through our four main program areas: research, awareness, education, and access programs. And we are a statewide nonprofit here in North Carolina. We really hope to improve life for those affected by lung cancer in North Carolina, really anyone affected by lung cancer. And our 3-year strategic vision is to impact more lung cancer patients. And we really just hope that, you know, at some point, anyone diagnosed with lung cancer hears about our organization, hears about our resources, and so that way they get the support they needed here locally. Who we are a nonprofit, we're a 501c3. Again, we're here in North Carolina. We're really the state's leading nonprofit focused on lung cancer, education, and research. I really think one of our main assets is that we really connect patients, survivors, family members with the medical and research community, since we do fund research And we have a great scientific advisory committee and board full of researchers and medical, medical oncologists and other providers as well. And so you'll see in most of the events that we do, it's the makeup of all of these professionals together, along with patients and family members. And especially events like these, we like to have them for patients to be able to ask questions of providers and specialists and experts. And it's more in an informal setting. It's not in the doctor's office or, things like that. And so we really like to connect patients with that community. And here is our staff. And just so you all know, we are currently working remotely. If you need to get in touch with any of us, you can email us, you can call the office, we're checking voicemails, and we should all be back in the office hopefully within a week or two. So, and then here's our board of directors. And like I mentioned, there's medical providers, there's advocates, survivors, business owners, really all different kinds of advocates on our board that help us, in everything we do. We've got a really great board. And so, like I mentioned, our 4 programs: research, awareness, education, and access. I'll go through these briefly. Since our first research project, we funded over $2.26 million in lung cancer research. And really the majority of it is here in North Carolina. And we're just so proud to be able to do that because of all the great institutions that we have here in North Carolina. We have a lot happening, and it's just a really exciting time, especially here in North Carolina. And here's just some examples of the research that we fund. Last year, we funded our first Career Development Award, and that was Emily Harrison at UNC. And that was a 2-year award, and so she started, I think, in January, so she's in her first year, and she'll have her second year next year. But then we also have a Fellows Award where there's 5 fellows, each at the different institutions in North Carolina. So we partner with UNC, Duke, Wake Forest, Levine, and East Carolina for the research fellows. And then we also have innovation grants as well. So we do a lot of research funding, and that's where most of our dollars do go to. So we're excited to be able to do that. With access, our main access program is really our gas card program. And so we've had that for, I think, 6 or 7 years now, where lung cancer patients are able to apply for a $50 gas card. And currently they can reapply every 4 months, so they can get up to 3 a year. And most recently, so we have an access grant program as well. And those are open for community organizations to apply for a grant of up to $10,000 to help with access for patients. So it could be access to treatment, screening, clinical trials, survivorship, things like that. But recently we just took one of our access grants and made it an emergency fund for patients. And so we were able to give 40 patients a $250 stipend to help during this COVID-19, these crazy times, and especially to help patients that have really had a hard time going through this. So we're excited to be able to do that. And you can just see here on this map, we've sort of been keeping track with our access program in the different counties that we're impacting. And we've impacted patients in most of the counties. So we're really excited about that. And here's just an example of some of the other access grants. These were last year's. A lot of them in the past have been about screening, but then we had another one last year that was about radon mitigation systems in Wake County. And so that's something that we hadn't funded before. We're really excited about that. Awareness, really we do awareness in everything we do. We have 5Ks, galas, golf tournaments. All of those events are raising awareness for lung cancer. And then we also do things like health fairs and community events and things like that as well to raise awareness. Education, here's just kind of a snapshot. We do our Power Up series like today. We also have an Advocacy Summit that will be August 14th and 15th. We're hoping to have it in Greensboro this year, though, you know, even if we do have it in Greensboro, we'll have a virtual component as well. So keep that in mind. We'll be sending out more information as soon as we can about that. We also do provider education as well. It's so important with so much happening in the world of lung cancer, all the research, the new treatments, that we do keep providers up to date. Survivor engagement, this is something that over the past even just couple of years that we've gotten more survivor programs going. And so for the past 2 years, we funded a lung cancer wellness retreat for survivors. We've also planned several events throughout the year that are just geared towards survivors. And our next one is actually National Cancer Survivors Day, which is June 7th. And it's via Zoom, and we are having Adam Klein, who was, if anyone watches the show Survivor, he was a winner, and now I can't even remember what year he was, what show it was, but yeah, so he was a winner a couple of years ago, and he just has a incredible story. He lost his mother to lung cancer, and so we're just excited to be able to have him share his story on June 7th. You can sign up for that on our website, and then we have other events across the state coming up throughout the year. And we're also very fortunate because we started last year as Survivor Steering Committee, and that committee is really helping to lead all of these efforts and to be able to provide, just feedback and guidance on what we provide for survivors. So hopefully we're meeting survivors' needs, and this committee helps us to do that. There's lots of ways to get involved with the Lung Cancer Initiative, event committees, health fairs. I know things are looking a little differently right now, but if you're interested in getting involved, email Colleen or I, and we can kind of get you connected. And then we are also doing kind of orientation webinars several times throughout the year. The next one, we might have one before August, but if not, we have one set for August 24th via Zoom, where you can just learn more about ways to get involved. We have our Lunge Forward series, which, things have been changing a little bit these days, but we have our Lunge Forward series. We have Charlotte, Triangle, and the Triad. The Charlotte event, actually, you can sign up for right now and go ahead and virtually run your 5K and take pictures and post it online. And then we're hoping to have a sort of celebration event in October for that. And I believe actually for the Triangle and Triad events, those are both online as well, that you can go ahead and register for those. Our Evening of Hope Gala, which is another great event. We actually did just postpone this event again, so we're looking at dates in October for this to be able to host it live. Stay tuned for more information about that. And then our next Power Up series is June 17th, and it's at 4:30. And we'll have several of our researchers speak and give an update on their research. And we'll also have a lung cancer survivor speak about his research experience as well. And again, for all of these, you can sign up on our website. And I think that's it. I'm gonna stop sharing. Thank you all again for joining today. And if you have questions, just post them in the Q&A and we will get to them. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenny. So now we're going to move on to Reverend Adrian Dixon, and I'm going to share my screen with his slides.
Okay, thanks, Colleen. So my name is Adrian. I've been at Duke Raleigh for almost 18 years. I oversee the chaplains department here, and as you can imagine, the last couple of months in the hospital have been unlike anything that I've ever seen before, unlike anything I think many of us have ever seen. And it's been interesting to walk with people and walk with our staff through these times. And so much of what I hear as a chaplain, and so much of what I've been thinking about, is what does it look like to get through these times? And it looks like more and more things are opening up around us, but it also looks like this pandemic and this virus is going to be with us for a while as well. And so, how do we continue to navigate these times? And so I really just wanted to begin by asking a question, and I think this is going to be in the form of a poll. What's getting you through? So I would be curious to know, are Zoom gatherings getting you through? Is faith, if that's something that's important to you, is it getting you through? If you're still talking to your family and friends after being confined with them for a couple of months, is that what's helping? Maybe meditation, maybe Netflix, maybe adult beverages, exercise, home projects. So let me hear from you. What's been getting you through the last couple of months?
And just so you all know, I think you can pick multiple answers, because I know for me, it's not just one thing getting me through. All right, I think almost everyone's answered, so I'll end this poll and see if I can share results. All right, can you guys see those results?
All right. So family and friends, exercise are the top two. Looks like Zoom gatherings and faith and home projects. If you go to Lowe's or Home Depot on the weekend, I think a lot of people are getting through by doing things around the house. Netflix. We won't ask how many of you have watched Tiger King, but that is been a popular show on Netflix. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things that are getting get people through. And I would tell you, for me, I am a huge baseball fan. I grew up here in the area. I've been in this area my whole life, but I love the Cincinnati Reds. And like a lot of sports right now, it's stopped. And there's really not a timeline on when it's coming back. And so I have 3 kids at home, and part of my outlet is watching baseball. And so, what happens when the things that have gotten you through in the past, or maybe are ways in which you kind of unwind or deal with stressful times in your life, aren't necessarily there. And so what I hope will happen today is maybe giving you some tools in the toolkit for what helps get you through. And it may look different for you from what it looked like this time last year, particularly when you think of something like lung cancer, and understanding that diseases change our lives, they change our perspectives, and maybe what got you through life before lung cancer and before this pandemic isn't what's getting you through right now. So, Colleen, if we can go to the next slide. I think so often we talk about looking for the silver lining in things. And I would imagine as much as there's things that you are ready to move on from, particularly with the pandemic, and maybe even from a diagnosis or treatment of lung cancer, I imagine that there's been gifts in it as well. Things that when we get on the other side of this pandemic, things that you might even miss that felt like real gifts in this time. And so much of how we look at getting through difficult times in our life is looking, where is the silver lining in this? And so here's some ways in which maybe to evaluate, not only in this pandemic, but maybe as you deal with cancer, where is the silver lining? Can I find it? Is there a way in which I can identify it? And so much of what this pandemic and what diseases like lung cancer invite us to do is reevaluate our life, take a step back, think about what's important, think about the things in life that I value. And so my question to you would be, what will you miss about this time? What will you miss about this pandemic? And again, for me, I've been home every night with my 3 kids. And when this curtain lifts and we move on, that's probably not going to happen. And so I'm going to miss that time that I have each night with my kids. What's been the greatest lesson you've learned during this? Another way to see the silver lining in all of this is remember what it will teach you. What areas have you grown in during this time? If you think about that in aspects of dealing with cancer, what has it taught you? Where have you grown? And this may be a difficult one to think about, but look for the silver lining of gratefulness. What reasons do we have to be grateful? It's interesting, in my conversations with patients, I go into rooms and I hear them, and I have such empathy at times for what they're facing. And those for whom I look at situations and think, man, this has got to be so hard. There's at times the spirit of gratefulness that they even are able to maintain with what they're facing. So what in your life do you have to be grateful for? Creating a game plan. So this pandemic is going to end. The treatments, you will get on the other side of them. When the restrictions are lifted, when the treatments are done, what are the things I'm going to do? What are the things that are in front of me? What are the things I'm going to be spending my time on? Really create a game plan for life after this season. I would tell you another way to seal the silver lining is to learn new words or phrases. So maybe even looking at this webinar today, I've got to do this versus I get to do this. So even changing our language and changing the way that we think about things really can help us see the silver lining. So I tell my kids all the time, we're living in history right now. And while many of us are looking at it as something I've got to get through, well, we actually get to get through this. And this will be something they'll tell their grandkids about. So think about how you can maybe change your language a little bit. And then the last thing with the silver lining piece is realize control. There's a lot of things we can't change right now. As much as we want to, there's a lot of things we can't fix. But there are things we can do. There are things that we can control. And so what are those things in your life that you can control? What realistically can you change and influence? Perhaps the greatest one is attitude and perspective. That for all of us, how we see things, how we view things, that gets a little bit into the new words and phrases, but what are those things that you can change in your life and you can influence? So look for the silver lining. And if there's nothing else you take away from today, or at least from this particular time, understand that oftentimes the silver lining is there. It just may take some effort to look for it in different phases and seasons of our life. Colleen, can we go to the next slide? So what can you do to actually get through times like this? And at Duke, we talk so much about resiliency. And oftentimes when you think about resiliency, what has gotten you through difficult times in the past will likely be what gets you through difficult times in the future. So whatever you've leaned on in the past is likely going to be what you're leaning on now. But if you're looking for something to lean on, it is amazing what doing something for others does for us and helping us get through things. And I think one of the best ways, particularly in this season that we're in right now, where we are limited in being able to help or do things for others, is what would it look like to write someone, to help someone? Albert Schweitzer said that the purpose of human life is to serve and to show compassion and the willingness to help others. And there is so much meaning. Helping people is one of the best things that you can do for yourself. And I think many of us have had that feeling of doing something for someone and just having this sense of peace and joy when we have, and it can be the simplest of things. And that is a gift. That I don't think that's something you can create. I don't think that's something you can just will about. It's something that I think is given to us when we go and we help someone else. And I don't know how many of you run. If you do, you've probably heard of the runner's high. When you're out and you're running and you really kind of have that breakthrough of going beyond the mileage or breaking your time or really just kind of extending yourself and coming back and just really feeling good. Well, there's this thing known as the helper's high as well. And behind it is a psychological theory that by giving and by doing for others, there's this natural production of a morphine high that happens in our bodies where endorphins get released. And what we find in helping other people is actually we're helping ourselves. And so if you're struggling right now with how am I going to get through this, or what can I do to maybe step up my dealing or coping with these times, is think about what you could do for someone else. And you may be surprised what that does for you in helping you get through this time. The last thing I want to share with you, and then we can see if we have any questions, if we can go to this next slide, is at Duke, one of the things that we've been encouraging staff to do is before they finish the day to think of 3 good things. And I think as human beings, we're more inclined to remember the negative aspects of the day. I mean, if you were to ask your spouse or partner or friend, how was your day? How many of us are going to start with the list of things that didn't go well, or the frustrations we had for the day? And I think some of that is just this natural tendency we have to more remember the negative parts of our day. What would it look like before you close each day to think of 3 good things? What are 3 things that happened today that were good? What was your involvement in them? Did you help bring any of them about? Did others help them bring about in your life? And write them down, journal them. It doesn't need to be anything long, but just write down 3 good things that happened today. And what you may find is again, your perspective and your outlook on things begin to change. You begin looking for those things in your day. And one of the other things that happens is you begin looking for how you might give those to other people, good things in their life. And before you know it, you may find and discover that how you're coping not only with this time, but how you're coping with these things that come into our life that we don't ask for, like lung cancer. You may just find that there's actually a lot of meaning to be had and a lot of meaning to be found in the midst of the journey that we're all on and that you're on specifically. So I hope that helps. I know we're sensitive on time and I want to be sensitive to our time, but wanted to offer this up as a way to kick off our time for how we can navigate COVID, but also maybe some ways in which you can navigate this cancer journey that you're on as well. Happy to answer any questions that may have come up in this, or if we want to move on, we can certainly do that as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adrian. That was a really wonderful presentation. Let me figure out how to stop sharing my screen. There we go. I haven't seen any questions come in yet, but if anyone thinks of anything they want to ask Adrian, please feel free to send those questions in. It's not too late. But until then, we'll go ahead and move over to Dr. Reddy. I'll let you take it away.
Hi. I'm Neil Reddy. I'm a medical oncologist at Duke and Durham. And I think that all healthcare providers for patients with lung cancer have been struggling to try to give people the care that they need while also mitigating risk of COVID-19 infection for both lung cancer patients, lung cancer survivors, their caregivers, and healthcare providers. So that is a challenge, and I think we're all trying to adjust to it. And it's something that's new, and we're all trying to figure out how that comes together in the best way right now. I think that in general, we're able to provide the appropriate care for people that have lung cancer. So there's no need for people not to get the treatment that they need. So certainly people who have potentially curable lung cancer are getting their surgeries or will get their definitive radiation kind of based treatment. And so I think patients who have a lung cancer are getting correct diagnosis, they're getting staging, and then they're getting the appropriate treatment they need. So patients with early stage cancer are getting their surgery, and patients who have limited stage type of lung cancer who aren't appropriate for surgery are getting their radiation-based treatment that is potentially curative. And I think for these sort of curative situations, those are kind of going on in a pretty standard way, standard timeline, just like they would before, without many differences. I think that one of the things that's different for patients and caregivers is that if somebody is hospitalized for surgery or something like that, generally there's very limited ability for patients to have visitors. So this particular week, I'm the attending on the oncology ward at the Duke Hospital in Durham. and that's really strikingly different. That with very few exceptions, patients don't have visitors, so they're on their own, and I think that's challenging and difficult. I think that where we see a little more flexibility in how we deliver care is in patients who have treatable lung cancer but not curable, where they're getting mostly medical therapy. In those sorts of situations, we're able to mitigate risk by altering what we do a little bit. So just as an example, let's say I had a patient who came in who had a lung cancer that was treatable but not curable, and we identified that their cancer had an epidermal growth factor receptor mutation. And we were going to treat them with an oral inhibitor of that target, which is a standard thing that we do. Before COVID, we would typically see them after 2 weeks or 4 weeks and 8 weeks and have blood work and assess how they were doing, what kind of side effects they were having, and then say do a CAT scan. Now that'll vary a little bit from practice to practice. There's no one set way to do that. But now we've kind of realized that in the era of COVID, where there are certain risks for coming to a big medical center and standing in line at a lab and then sitting in a waiting room and then coming in and kind of going home, that for perhaps the first couple of blood draws and evaluations at weeks 2 and 4, in our practice, we're sending people to have labs done locally, maybe at a little commercial laboratory near where they live, at a strip mall where they can just get in and out and get the blood drawn. They get the results faxed to us, and then we call them on the phone and do a telehealth visit and make sure that they're doing all right. And then when they come in for their CAT scan to see how the treatment's doing, that's when we'd actually have a person-to-person interaction. So I think that for people who are on oral therapies who are doing well, we sometimes have the opportunity to do a fair bit of telehealth, even though they're on medical treatment for their lung cancer. There are some patients more and more that we're treating with immune therapies for their cancer, and sometimes that starts off with immune therapy, where they're getting intravenous immune therapy every so often, and sometimes they're getting immune therapy after initially getting it with chemotherapy. There are now various immune therapies that are approved for treatment every 4 weeks or every 6 weeks rather than every 2 or 3 weeks. So we're now able to space out how often people have to come and get their treatments. With chemotherapy, there isn't so much of an opportunity to space out how far people are getting it or to give it at home or do things like that. But by making adjustments for all of our people who are getting therapy and to minimize the number of people who have to come in, then when patients and people have to come in to get evaluated or get blood work or get an x-ray, there are just fewer people there, so that when they come to the healthcare facility, they're able to socially distance, and there's less volume. So this decreases the risk of getting infections or other problems for both the people who are coming to get care and for the healthcare providers that are seeing them. So all of this, in many ways, decreases the risk and makes it possible for people to get the treatment they need and still have it be safe, and have no compromise in the kind of care that they're getting for their lung cancer or other cancers. I think that where we're being a little more flexible and making adjustments are for people who are in surveillance. So for instance, if someone had potentially curative treatment with surgery or radiation and they're a year or 2 out from therapy doing well, and we hope that they're cured, if the standard of care would be for them to get a CAT scan every 4 to 6 months. We're doing 6 months rather than 4 months, so they don't have to come as frequently. If they were on long-term follow-up and maybe getting a CAT scan every year, right now, rather than doing it at 12 months, if things have been stable for a long time, maybe we make it every 18 months. So all of that allows us to continue to give good care, have people get appropriate follow-up and treatment for their cancer, surveillance as a lung cancer survivor, which is also important for a lot of reasons, but to mitigate and minimize the risk for the COVID-19. So I think that we feel pretty confident that we are able to provide good care for people, and I think that's true for all the practices, because I think there's been so much good work done in North Carolina where in general people have been pretty responsible, and we haven't seen a huge spike in the number of patients testing positive or the number of people being admitted to the hospitals, so that this allows people to be able to come get their medical care in a safe and effective way. I think that one area where I suspect, I don't have any data on this, but I suspect for things like screening, so like screening CAT scans for someone who might be at risk because of previous smoking history, I think that those are probably falling off a bit or are being delayed because that's an area where I think that folks are trying to minimize how much testing they're doing, how many people they have going to various facilities to try to mitigate risk of COVID-19 by minimizing the crowding in medical facilities and allow people to socially distance in a safe way so that everybody can get the care that they need. So I think this has been a challenge for everyone. I think particularly in North Carolina because I think we reacted, the government reacted appropriately, and all the healthcare facilities and organizations and hospitals have reacted appropriately, that things have stayed under pretty good control, and that this has allowed us to be able to still provide good care to people, but have practices that mitigate risk in a way that people can get the care that they need without coming under great risk of getting an infection or some other complication of COVID-19. So that's pretty much what I had to say, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Reddy. I haven't seen any questions come in for you yet, but everyone who's here, if you think of anything, please feel free to put it in the Q&A and we can ask Dr. Reddy later. I did have someone send in a resource that I'm going to share in the chat box about referring to the 3 good things that Adrian was talking about. Apparently their team had come up with an app to help record these 3 good things. If anyone's interested in checking that out, I'll send it out to everyone now. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to Angela. Angela, if you want to share a little bit about your story and how you're coping and how you're doing with all of this as a lung cancer survivor.
All right. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name's Angela Hopper. I'm a native of Western North Carolina. I live in Asheville. I'm the mother of 2 beautiful grown daughters. I'm the wife of a wonderful man. I'm an air quality specialist for the state of North Carolina, soon to be retired. And I'm the keeper of the flame for the Division of Air Quality, but that's a story for another day. I love to travel, especially to national parks. I'm an avid reader, particularly mysteries and Southern writers. And oh yeah, as Colleen said, I'm a lung cancer survivor, almost 6 years. I was diagnosed with stage 3B non-small cell adenocarcinoma in June 2014. I was told at that time that I would be on chemotherapy the rest of my life. My last chemo treatment was April the 9th of 2015. I had 4 CyberKnife treatments to 1 remaining lung tumor in my left lung in May of 2015. My symptom was a cough, that it was I was told by the doctors that it was a sinus infection and allergies. and I went back to the doctor 3 times. And on the 3rd time, my left ribs had started hurting. And so they sent me for a chest x-ray. They thought maybe that I had injured or broken a rib due to my coughing. The x-ray showed fluid on my lung, and so that led to a month of tests. Lung cancer was on nobody's radar. I was a never smoker, and if I had not been persistent, then I would not be here today. In 2018, I found out that I had brain mets, so I asked for a brain MRI, and I wasn't having any symptoms. I just asked for it since I hadn't had one since diagnosis, and they found 3 tiny specks. So they did CyberKnife on those specks, and my current status is no evidence of active. So that's good news. When I was first diagnosed, immunotherapy and targeted therapies were not the first line of treatment. So lung cancer's come a long way since I was diagnosed. So how is COVID-19 affecting me? I think every lung cancer survivor story is going to be different. Some survivors are in active treatment, some have other underlying medical conditions, and some are working, and some have small children, others have surgeries delayed or scans delayed, and some have lost their jobs or their spouses have. I could go on and on with this list. I did have a scan delayed myself. I'm now teleworking instead of going to the office or the field. I've had to learn a lot of new technology. I'm no longer able to go to the Y, which I love to do. So I'm walking the neighborhood and doing yoga online. So that's helpful that that's available. I'm listening to my church services online, and they're offering daily devotionals now. So that's been a good addition for me. I know some folks are having fun cooking, trying new recipes, but that's not me. I continue to try to eat well and stay away from stress eating. My husband's doing the grocery shopping for us. I keep a gratitude journal. I've done this on and off for a long time. And did you know that you cannot feel sorry for yourself and grateful at the same time? It's impossible. The journal, and I know that Adrian also mentioned about gratitude. I'm attending the LCI Zoom lunches. They've been a lot of fun. I've got to know people across the state. When COVID started, I was watching way too much COVID news coverage. I decided to decrease watching the news coverage and turn to reliable websites such as the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services website and the CDC, and I've watched the LCI videos with the doctors, and they've been good. When I saw my mental oncologist recently, he reminded me that stress is a risk factor for reoccurrence, and no one wants to hear those words. I'm trying to reach out to friends, especially the ones that I know that are alone, live alone, or those that are having a difficult time. I'm trying to help a small independent bookstore that's only been in business for around a year stay in business. I'm ordering books from her. She's shipping the books since she's closed to the public. And I'm sharing the store information on Facebook and with my family. It's good to help someone else during this time. And I get to add to my to be read file. Since I can't see my family and friends, then I turned my buffet table into display of photos of my family and friends. It's been nice to have their smiling faces on this buffet table displayed, and I didn't realize before I did this that I don't have some photos of some of my youngest, newest family members. So I'll take care of that later. So COVID information is changing rapidly. I just heard this morning something they'd been telling us is different now. So I know that sometimes we struggle as lung cancer patients about making decisions. And I learned early on in my cancer journey that I wasn't going to have every single piece of information that I might need, that we can only make the best decision with the information that we have. None of us have a crystal ball. We don't know, and it's hard not to get caught up in decision making. You're wanting to make the best decision, but you need to make the best decision with the information you have at the time. And with this COVID, like I mentioned before, the information's changing. As lung cancer patients or survivors, we need to take care of ourselves, protect ourselves best we can from the virus, and enjoy our lives. When things turn to normal, and we as lung cancer survivors still have to take precautions. We may feel left out or left behind, but we need to remember we aren't alone. I will end my remarks with one of my favorite quotes, and then I'll tell you one of my husband's favorite quotes. My favorite quote is by Mark Twain. I've lived through some terrible things in my life, some of which actually happened. That's about Lori. And my husband's favorite quote is from Carl Sandburg, the poet Carl Sandburg. I'm an idealist. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm on my way. So thank you guys for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Angela. That was great. And I took away some helpful things myself, even not as a lung cancer survivor. I think we all did. So we have a couple of questions here that came in. And this first one, Angela, I think is for you.
Okay.
So, and maybe Dr. Reddy, you might want to weigh on this too. But Lynn asked, for survivors, what is your advice about venturing out?
I think that venturing out, I'll speak and then the doctor can speak, is that you need to take precautions. It will depend on your particular situation. Every survivor's story is different and the precautions they need to take are different. But I personally am trying to be cautious about what I do and who I come into contact with.
So I agree with Angela. I think that lung cancer survivors do need to be cautious. I think it's great to get outside and get exercise. So if you're outside walking on an uncrowded road or on a trail in the woods, that is certainly very low risk, and certainly getting good exercise will make you healthier and is a very positive thing. I think that cancer survivors and certainly lung cancer survivors need to be a little more careful than people who are, say, young, middle-aged, without medical problems, so that as society opens up for risk activities like going and sitting inside restaurants and things like that, I would be cautious about that. I wouldn't be one of the early adopters to that, adopters of that behavior. I would hold back a little bit until it's clear that that's going to be safe.
Great, thank you both. This next question is probably for Dr. Reddy. They said, as a survivor who has had surgery, chemo, and radiation therapy and is now 3 years out and on a 6-month CT scan routine, is it more important to stay on that schedule or delay for a month or two until we see what happens as we move into phase 2?
So I think that delaying a few months is fine. For somebody who's out, say, 3 years and has been doing well, I think that there's really little or no risk for delaying a scan for 1 or 2 or 3 months. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Great. And this is the last question I have, also to you, Dr. Reddy. And feel free, if anyone has any other questions, you can still send them in. But this one says, what are your thoughts on pulse oximeter apps on phones? I have one that I downloaded from the Apple App Store.
So I'm not an expert on those. So I really don't know much about them. I like a lot of things. I think that watching oxygen levels in kind of real time can create a lot of anxiety. I would mostly just check them if you are having symptoms. So if you're feeling short of breath, have new worsening of cough or something like that, then it would be reasonable to check. But if you are otherwise sort of stable, breathing okay, I would not routinely check it. There are a lot of reasons that it can be off. And I think that would probably cause more sort of anxiety and worry for no good reason than be likely to give some useful result. So basically, if you're feeling sick, it's reasonable to check it. But if you're feeling well, I would not routinely check that, because it's more under, if you're feeling well, it's more likely to be sort of a false positive that is unlikely to really need workup or worry and that sort of thing.
Great, thank you. Well, I think that is all the questions we received, so we can go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much to each of you for your remarks. This was a really great event. I'm taking away a lot of things. I think our attendees are as well. And thank you to everyone who logged on to join. We hope this was helpful, and you have our contact information. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. We can connect you with any of our speakers. And there will be a survey that will pop up in your browser after this. So if you could take a few minutes to give us some feedback, as we are definitely new to this whole virtual webinar thing, we would really appreciate to hear your thoughts. So thank you all, and have a great rest of your day.